Hello and welcome everyone to today's workshop on the Felix Scholarships. Very quickly, I will introduce to you Project EduAccess. I'll introduce you to your panelists, and then I will hand it over to them to give you an overview of the scholarship. They'll tell you about the eligibility criteria, what the timeline looks like for the different universities, what the application process is like, what is the assessment criteria. For one of the universities, you're required to submit an online application form, so we'll discuss that. The scholarship also has an interview round, so we'll discuss very briefly what that looks like, and then the panelists will give you some tips on writing your applications, after which we move on to the Q&A. Okay, for those of you who are joining us for the first time, we are Project EduAccess. We're a network of students and professionals who've done higher education abroad. We believe that access to higher education, leadership, and professional opportunities is a privilege that most people from marginalized communities are systematically denied through cost, information, and dispositional barriers. And at Project EduAccess, we try to we attempt to improve inclusivity in these spaces. We do this by providing mentorship and engaging in advocacy, and also running in-person and online capacity building workshops. And today's workshop is part of our series of online workshops on scholarship opportunities to study abroad. Very quickly, I'll introduce you to your panelists. Some familiar faces. We have with us Medha, who's currently doing her DPhil in Geography and the Environment at University of Oxford. She received the Felix Scholarship in 2020 to do her master's in Water Science Policy and Management, if I've gotten the name of the course correctly. She's also the recipient of the Oxford Indira Gandhi Scholarship, on which she's doing her PhD. And for those of you who may have joined us last weekend, we have already done a workshop on this scholarship. But if you've not, I'll send a link to the workshop in chat in some time. Then we have with us Monika, who's currently doing a PhD in criminology at University of Cambridge. She got the Felix Scholarship in 2023 to do a PhD at University of Oxford, both at the criminology department as well as the international development department. So she'll be speaking to you about that. And then we have with us Zaid, who pursued his LLM from SOAS University of London on the Felix Scholarship in 2020, and recently completed his MPhil in law at University of Oxford. And then we have with us Aatreya, who is currently doing their PhD in law from SOAS University and received the Felix Scholarship in 2022. So thank you to all four of you for joining us and speaking to everybody about the Felix Scholarship. I will now hand it over to Monika. Thank you.
Thank you, Asma, for the introduction. So I'll first give a brief overview of the Felix Scholarship. So the Felix Scholarship is administered by the Felix Scholarship Trust and was founded to offer gifted underprivileged students from India the opportunity of furthering their postgraduate education by attending a university in the UK. Felix Scholarships are offered at 3 universities, Oxford, Reading, and SOAS, which is a part of the University of London. The scholarships are awarded on the basis of outstanding academic merit and financial need. For entry in September 2024, there are 6 Felix scholarships available to Indian nationals with first-class degree to pursue graduate studies at SOAS, University of London. So there's 1 PhD scholarship and 5 scholarships for masters. Applicants may apply for any full-time PhD program or taught master's program, so it's applicable for all disciplines. And part-time programs are not eligible, so you need to be a full-time PhD scholar. The Felix Scholarship covers the full cost of tuition fees, living costs, and a return airfare. So this also, changes across universities and also across various years. So it was slightly different the last time, but we'll get to the details of it in some time. Yeah, Ms. Burr, could you just go on to the next slide? Thank you. So the eligibility criteria is that the applicant must be Indian national and not currently living or studying outside of India. So applicants must not have previously studied for 1 year or more outside India. Applicants must have at least a first-class bachelor's degree from an Indian university or comparable institution. Priority may be given to applicants with a higher first-class bachelor's degree. Exceptionally, those with an upper second-class degree at the bachelor's level may be considered for PhD if they hold a first-class degree at the master's level. Those who already hold degrees from universities outside India are not eligible to apply. Those who already hold a master's degree cannot apply for a master's degree, and similarly, those who already hold a PhD cannot apply for a PhD scholarship. Those who have already taken up a scholarship to pursue PhD studies at an Indian university are not eligible for a Felix Scholarship, and Felix Masters alumni who have obtained a distinction at Masters may apply for a PhD Felix Scholarship. Graduates are expected to return to work in their home country. There are queries in the chat box regarding this particular slide, so should we take it at the end or right now?
You can clarify that if that's possible.
Right. So there's this question that first class bachelor's degree mean distinction of 65% or so. I suppose it is that. I think it is so it depends. I think because in Delhi University, if you have like above 60%, I think it's considered first class. But if there are other panelists who are more clear about this, can you can pitch in.
Yeah, so I think in the UK, first class means 70%. There is an international, so on your course website, there's going to be a link to a page, or on your departmental website, where you have the UK equivalents for different countries. So for India, I think 70% is first class, regardless of whether my university saw 60% as first class or not. And I think the upper second is 65 and above. So people who are first class student in India were usually upper second class undergraduate degree students in the UK, but that's not a problem as long as you have, I think, 65% and above. Yeah.
Right. So there's another query that is it any subject specific? Can I apply for a master's in engineering? I think one can. I think it's available across disciplines. The third question is that I've talked to some students at Oxford who received other scholarships but were not considered for Felix, and they weren't sure why. I'm applying to a 2 years MPhil at Oxford, and Felix is the only scholarship I know of which funds 2 years degree at Oxford. How to ensure that your application is considered for Felix? I had talked to 4 Oxford students through EduAccess, and none of them were considered for Felix. Okay, so my response to this is that it happens automatically. So your department ranks the students, and then they, accordingly place students for Felix, shortlist students for Felix interview. But I think Medha has something more to say about it regarding what you can do to get considered.
So
Yeah.
how about Monika just goes through the slide, and then
Yeah.
we can take questions at the
Sure.
end.
Yeah,
Let's
I was
do
just
it.
gonna suggest that. Yeah. So I think now we
Yeah.
can just take the questions at the end.
Right. Yeah, so this slide is done. I think, so the last was that graduates are expected to return to their home country, but then this also, I think, is not a very serious restriction posed on the Felix scholars. You can choose to work in UK even after doing your PhD. So the timeline for Oxford is that you submit your course application around December or January, depending on the course deadline. So it would either fall, like, depending on your course deadline, whether it falls in December or January. So you submit that application. There's no separate application for Felix for Oxford. So you have to just submit your course application by the funding deadline. In February or March, the candidates are likely to receive admission offers from the department. And it is after that you will be shortlisted for online interview with the members. And around April or May, early May, the interview takes place. And around late May or June, you would be notified of the outcome of the interview. And if you don't hear from the panel by the end of June, then you must assume that your application was unsuccessful, because they don't write an email to unsuccessful applicants. Yeah.
Hi, I hope you can all hear me. I'm going to briefly speak about the application for SOAS. So all candidates are required to submit their applications for their respective programs by the 19th of January 2024. And by, I think the deadline for Felix Scholarship is also on somewhere in the middle of January. And then within 4 weeks, you'll probably hear from the university on whether your application has been successful or not. And by March, the Felix Scholarships office will get back to you on whether you've been shortlisted or not for the interview round. And then in April or May, the interviews usually happen. And by June, you should hear from them on about the final decision for your application. And the application process for the Felix Scholarship at SOAS is pretty straightforward compared to the other scholarships. You need to, like I said, apply for the program by the 19th of January, and then apply for the Felix Scholarship through the Google form, which is again pretty straightforward. You just need to answer some of the questions that they ask about your education background, employment history, and then there's one question about how your course is going to help you in working for your society when you go back to your home country. And now I think Medha will talk to you about the application process for Oxford.
Right.
Sorry, it's Zaid still, and then the next slide is Medha.
Okay, cool.
Misbah, I didn't hear you, sorry.
It's the application process for SOAS and then Oxford.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so I think, yeah, that's about it. What you need to do for the application form is fill out the Google form, answer some of the basic questions like your past and present deployment, educational qualifications, any positions of responsibility you've held at school or university or college, any extracurricular activities that you've taken part in. And then the main question that they ask you is what benefit your course of study is going to bring to your home country. I think you need to answer that in about 250 or 300 words. Again, that's a very brief statement compared to other scholarship applications. Yeah, over to you, Medha, now.
Hi. So just to go back to a previous question about the percentage, so I've just popped the link in the chat on international degree equivalency. I think first class is 75% as the UK sees it for India, but it has basically the conversions for every country. So you can just go and check what percentage you got in India versus what they expect you to have for a certain bit. Right now, so Oxford has no separate application process, which essentially means that you cannot, you have no way of separately applying for the Felix Scholarship. You just need to apply to your course, but by the scholarship deadline. So when you go to the course website, there will be two deadlines. One is something in November, and then you'll have a January deadline usually. And beside that deadline, it's going to be said that this is the last scholarship deadline. So obviously, if you apply for the November, it's fine, you will be considered, but you must apply by the January deadline. All postgraduate courses at Oxford are eligible for the Felix Scholarship. There's one PhD scholarship, which is called DPhil at Oxford. But other than that, MSc, MPhil, BPhil. In my year, I remembered somebody was on a course called BPhil. It's considered as a postgraduate degree, but Oxford just loves to retain old terms. Yeah, so don't worry if there's any question in the chat in terms of course eligibility. Felix applies to everything. Now, how the system happens, at least in Oxford, is, and this is something I get a lot of questions on, is since you cannot apply, this is how it works. You make an application to your department, you get an offer from the department, and then the department ranks all the Indian students who have been accepted across different courses in the department and makes a short list. So by eligible, it's, I mean, as long as you have the eligibility criteria for Felix met, but suitable is obviously depends on who are you competing against in your department, and there's a merit list. And then each department at Oxford nominates their shortlisted candidates to the division. So there are lots of divisions like, I mean, engineering division, I mean, natural sciences division, social sciences division. And then from that division, the final shortlist goes to the Felix committee. And then they build another shortlist of final interview candidates. So it's quite a staged process. And that's why there's going to be quite a few months between your application, your offer letter, and then you getting that interview call for Felix. If you're shortlisted for an interview, the applicants will get an email indicating the interview date. And usually the email will not come very soon in comparison to the actual interview date. It's usually just a week or so. And then from then on, it just depends on the interview performance. So you will have a panel. Everybody has a different kind of panel. There are some people who are common in the panel, but then suited to your course, you will have a more selective panel. If selected, you're going to get a scholarship acceptance letter, which is going to arrive within 2 to 4 weeks of the interview. This differs if there is a pandemic. I got it in the pandemic year, so I had to wait for over a month to hear back from the Felix Scholarship. So did everybody else in that year who got through. And I mean, this is for if you go to the interview process, which is, it's fine to not know some of the answers because Felix is, I mean, it's a very diverse panel interviewing you. So it has, I'm sure it has happened to all of us. Yeah, so that's me. And can I get the next slide? Right, so academic merit is the most important part of the Felix Scholarship. Financial needs of the candidate will be taken into consideration, but this is the tricky bit. So nowhere on the application form, Oxford application form, can you indicate sort of, I mean, there's just one place where you take that, okay, you want to be considered for scholarships, but the details of your need of financial support is, you don't have a place to say it. So one thing, and I'll cover this later, is if one of your academic referees just puts it in their recommendation letter that this candidate is in need of financial support, then that's helpful. I'll come back to that at a later slide. And then only those who have been accepted for admission will be, like I said, you first need to have an offer letter from your department for the course. And only then about a month or so, or maybe 2 months later, you're going to probably get an email. One sad thing is that if you don't get selected, they don't send out rejection letters. So that's the only thing to be careful about, so that you also maximize your I mean, options. Yeah, that's me.
Hi. So the online application form for SOAS is a separate application form from the course application that you're going to make. And one of the questions that I also saw is that whether you have to make an application to the course beforehand. Yes, you have to do it before you apply for the Felix scholarship through a different form, because in the Felix application form, you'll be asked about your application number. Okay, so the online application forms gathers data to assess your eligibility for the scholarship, academic merit, and financial needs. All candidates are expected to explain what benefit they believe their course of study will bring to their home country. If you're applying for a PhD program, you'll be expected to describe the area of your proposed research in 450 words in a manner easily understandable by a non-specialist. Because as Medha pointed out, that the interview panel is very diverse. It's not that only people from your discipline will be there, but people from other disciplines will also be there. Applicants are also expected to provide information about past and present employment, educational qualifications, posts of responsibility held at school, university, college, or elsewhere, main extracurricular activities and interests, funds already secured for their course, like their own finances, parents and guardians, government, or any other scholarships or loans. So the extracurricular activities, even though they ask about it, I think one of the slides also mentions that it doesn't really come up in the interview as such. Can I have the next slide? Yeah, so we'll all be kind of, I think, chipping in this part of the interview process, because I think the masters will have a little bit of different kind of questions than the PhD one. But in general, the interview process not only tests the candidate's academic abilities in the chosen disciplines, but also assesses the candidate's personality, financial need, and suitability for the scholarship. Candidates are expected to be aware of recent developments that have occurred in their areas of interest, both academic and general. They will also be expected to elaborate on their research interest in case they're applying for a PhD, or their course includes a research component like MPhil or any other master's with a dissertation. Candidates must have a good command over both spoken and written English. Each interview is about 30 to 45 minutes. The interviews will be held online by the Felix Scholarship Trust. And these interviews are not conducted by the university. That is something to keep in mind. Thank you. I think I'm done.
Yeah, sorry, just 1 second. Yes, so for master's applicants, like I said, I think it's always harder to get noticed because you don't have a research gap, you don't have a knowledge gap, you're just making a very general application. So I think what I did, and I can just speak about my own, is you need to critically engage with your topic. So usually whatever course there is, they will have a writing sample or at least a statement of purpose. So if they do have a writing sample, I wrote my own writing sample. I did not suit it to the course. I did not use a previously written material because it was just so different. So yeah, you need to critically engage. By that, I mean that you need to have an argument that is backed by evidence when you're engaging with the topic on which you're writing. So it should not just be descriptive or look like you have summarized different examples. So you need to give your opinion, but in a way that's very balanced. And like I said, it's backed by some form of data or some evidence. The next focus is for the personal statement. So there needs to be a balance between the personal you and the professional you. It is not just about what you've done professionally for the last 5 to 10 years or what your scores are. I would really recommend not repeating anything from your CV in your personal statement. So I did use personal experiences from growing up and some visits I had to the mountains or something like that. But what really matters is how your personal experiences have shaped your understanding of the world and how that relates theoretically to whatever it is that you're trying to do. And then how does your, what have been your learnings from your professional backgrounds? So it's not a problem if you have not worked or studied in a field that is relevant to the field that you're applying to. It's just about how you draw upon those experiences. So just as an example, I did a Bachelor of Arts in English literature, and then at Oxford, I did a Master of Science in a completely different course. So interdisciplinarity is appreciated. This is something that I found out later from one of my academic referees, is that he had mentioned in his letter of recommendation that I was a suitable candidate for scholarships and I need financial support, and he strongly recommends me for it. This, I think, definitely made a difference. I did not know this before the application, but for all other applicants, I really recommend that you get an academic referee to do it, just to highlight your application more to your course directors and department and so on and so forth. And then, of course, a succinct CV. I think the CV is just as important, and it needs to follow. Every department usually have their own guidelines has their own guidelines for the CV. So usually 2 to 3 pages, not longer than that. But from the tips, I think the most important bit would be, the critical engagement with your topic in the writing sample. You will be asked questions on that during the interview. So yes, thank you.
Zaid, is there anything you want to add to that? You're on mute, Zaid.
Sorry, my bad. Yeah, I think Medha covered pretty much everything. Maybe we can now hear from the participants, their questions.
One last one last point again, because I was searching the whole degree equivalent thing for the attendees. I remember it was quite confusing for me. So I have put in, for the Oxford applicants, there is a separate page where Oxford just puts in, if you're from India, you need to get these scores for this level of eligibility. It's in the chat. Look at it. That's comprehensive. Great. That's it.
So these are a few general tips for PhD applicants. The first is that have a clear statement of the research gap and how your proposed work would fill that gap. So this also, this makes your proposal more defined, but also it makes it easy for you to go through the interview because, they constantly ask you in the interview that what are you bringing new to the table. Now that new does not have to be a breakthrough again, but then it has to be, it should show your clear knowledge of what the existing literature is and what is the exact field where you are trying to intervene. So have a clear statement of the research gap and the research problem that you're looking at. Think clearly about the theoretical field or the area of study I just mentioned that your research aims to contribute to and how. If your research is on a topic that has immediate contemporary relevance, try to keep yourself up to date with any new developments in the field for the interview. The most important thing, I think, especially for the purposes of the interview, is that why should the research be done at SOAS, Oxford, or Reading, and not in your home country? Have a strong answer for this question, especially when your work pertains to India and has a field work in India. So especially for students in social sciences, I think you need to be very clear about why it needs to be done at this particular university. And similarly, why it needs to be done in UK and not, like anywhere else. Aatreya, do you want to take it forward?
Yeah, thank you, Monika. So the non-academic questions asked in the Felix form regarding extracurricular activities generally doesn't come up in the interview. It's much focused on your work. And most importantly, something that we keep telling anyone who asks about this is that remember, as Medha also pointed out today, that remember that there might be questions where you will not know the exact answers. And it's very important that you do not feel that you do not feel underconfident within the interview when that something like that happens, because they're also trying to kind of see how you perform under such circumstances of stress where you do not know the exact answer. So they will be observing how you deal with questions where you do not know the answers already, how you're tackling those things. The other important thing that I would like to add is that in the Felix application form for SOAS, the 450 words that asks you to kind of give a brief description of your proposed research, one of the very important things is that even during the interview and in that particular space is to kind of project your proposal like something that is doable. So the fact that it can be done, it doesn't seem too disconnected from the reality or doesn't seem too utopian. So that include things that make your methodology is something that is doable in the amount of time that you have for your PhD. So those are the things that you need to keep in mind. Anything else, Monika?
No, I don't think so. I think feasibility was an important point that you raised, and I think, yeah, that's broadly it.
Perfect. I think we can now move to the questions. We have quite a few questions in chat. So I'm going to very quickly start. Okay. So God, I have to go all the way down. If anyone would rather sort of raise their hand and ask the question, feel free to do that as well. But I will take the question. It says, am I eligible if I did my primary or secondary education, which is 10th, outside of India?
That's interesting. I don't think so, because I think Felix is very focused on giving opportunities to students who have not studied abroad. But that being said, this was school education. So if it was an exchange program or something, or I mean, maybe your parent is a foreign service officer who was posted in a different country, I think you can just explain that in a line in your statement of purpose as to why you studied abroad for that 2 years, and just hope for the best.
Great. Then there was a question about, is it subject specific? Can I apply? And I think this was answered, which was that no, you can apply for any program. Then there was another question, which was by Prachi, and I see Prachi, you've raised your hand. So if you want to unmute and ask your question directly.
Yes, actually, I have two questions. One which I have written down, that is, like when you said academic merit, what is the percentage that they like are looking for, like, you know, to consider an application for Felix Scholarship? And like you can say a ballpark number if you have anything in mind. And second question was, I am applying to MPhil in development studies, and the website mentions that it is like an introduction to development and process and approaches that are there in development studies. So, like, and I come from a science background. I have done BSc in chemistry and then worked in nonprofit sector for 2 years. Now that when I'm going, like when I'm applying to Oxford for the academic writing part, like you and some other scholars have also mentioned that it needs to be extremely critical and also different from normal academic writing. So I'm not able to understand what is like, how is it going to be different from a normal academic paper? And considering that I am someone whose background is not aligned with what I'm applying for, how is like, is professional experience not counted at all? Or how can I compensate for my lack of academic knowledge there?
So this is for a master's at Oxford, right? Is it fine if I take it? Yeah. Okay. So about the scores, if you meet the eligibility of your course for which you're applying, after that, it's up to the department. Just to give you a ballpark, is I can speak about my score. So I've never won a gold medal in my life. You don't need to top the course to be considered for a scholarship. Yeah, so just as long as, I think my GPA was 9 point something out of 10, but it was the person who came first got a 10 out of 10 GPA for my undergrad. So just to explain, you do not need to be like a quote unquote topper to be considered for the scholarship interview. You just need to have a relatively like high score. And I think it's about the eligibility. If you meet the eligibility, you have a standing chance. The next thing was about interdisciplinarity. I don't think that's a problem. I would see it as a strength. What you really need to do is just make sure how your previous background is contributing to your understanding of the background that you're currently seeking. Critical engagement, I would disagree saying that it's different from other academic papers. I think all academic papers to be published need to critically engage with the topic. And if you are already looking at academic papers, then you're already on the right track. So that sort of argumentation, succinct, brief, but with evidence, and having a coherent argument where you're not contradicting yourself every 3 paragraphs. So if you're looking at academic papers, it's not different from academic papers, but I would like to point out that your level of writing doesn't need to be at the level of published academic papers. You just need to be able to engage with the topic in a sort of insightful and well-informed way. I think here the point that Aatreya made is super important, is that don't be unrealistic and have that groundedness in the claims that you're making with what you're going to do with this topic. I think we all need to be very, very humble in what impact our work can have. So yeah, just keep it feasible and realistic. Yeah, that's it.
I just want to add one point on the sort of academic requirement. So the Felix requirement, very similar to what the university requirement is, and unless and until you sort of get an offer from the university, you won't be considered for the scholarship. So it's really important that you are able to get an offer. And and you'll notice that all of the university websites usually say first class, second class honors. And so, and while there are, as Medha pointed as well, there are resources that help you convert and But there are, again, even within universities in India, there's such a range of sort of just marking and grading. So what they usually do in these situations, that see your performance relative to your cohort. So so for example, as Medha said, like a 9 GPA was considered like the top in her university, but somewhere else maybe the highest is a 7 or an 8 GP out of 10. So what here is important is for your recommenders to sort of write about your academic performance in relation to your class, your batch, and more generally speak of what that grade means. So what percentage would you fall in your cohort? So would you be in, say, the top 1%, 2%, or top 10 rank or something like that? So which gives an idea to the assessors what that specific score really means. So like for example, when I was in law school, getting more than 65 and getting between 65 to 70 was considered amazing, and very few people got like between 70 to 75, and nobody after 75. So then it was then my professor sort of spoke of my marks relative to my batch and course. So I think that's where it becomes important. So I just want, and this is true not just for Felix, but for any scholarship and for all university applications generally. So your recommenders are the ones that really speak of your academic merit.
Also, just to add one thing, because we are talking so much about this course, sometimes, because I know that there are students from Delhi University, and in Delhi University, especially in masters, you don't get above like 65% at all. Like the toppers get 64, 65%. So I just want to mention that don't get disheartened if you have like a low percentage in masters. There are sometimes an opportunity. I'm not sure if I got it in Oxford, but I remember getting this opportunity to mention, like, along with your transcript, you can just write a note saying that that your university marking is stringent, and like the top 1% tends to get like somewhere around 60 to 65%. So you can always do that. So don't fret over like low marks too much. And like I did not have a good percentage in my undergrad at all, but some like it might things might have worked out for me, maybe because I had good like in master's and MPhil coursework, so I had multiple degrees. But I think that even with a low score, you can get through universities as well as scholarships. So just like, yeah, and along with asking your recommenders to mention your position in the cohort.
Sorry, can I ask just a related question there?
Yeah, go for it.
Sure. So, so I also come from a traditional university wherein, we typically given not even grades or CGPAs. We used to write 100-mark papers, and we used to give percentages, and the maximum that one could get is around 60%. So just on the qualification and the eligibility bit, in terms of the applications, wherein, Oxford, the website mentions the fact that, you have to have a first class, and then, there are equivalent conversion mechanisms that are there on the website. So if we don't meet that, hardcore 60% first class rule, so is the application rejected outrightly, or, things like work experience, and if in the LOR the referees have mentioned that the candidate falls within the top 5 percentile, do those things get considered, or is the application rejected outrightly? That's my question. Thank you.
Can I take that? So if you look at the link that I've sent for Oxford, it doesn't just say what the percentages mean. It directs you to another link that has the list of universities and the categorization of universities. So for example, since I was from a government university, and my 65 is equivalent to a 95 from a different private university. There is a specific categorization there of different universities in India. It's very detailed. For your category of university, you need to meet the minimum requirement that is there for departmental eligibility. So it's not a PAN 60% or a PAN 70%. You will have more nuanced divisions. Just take a look at that. And yes, I think all the panelists here have said it, that scores are not a high score doesn't mean a scholarship selection. I think it is about how you think and how you engage with your topic and what you can contribute. I, for example, know a lot of like really high scorers who had way better grades than me, who did not get the scholarship, whereas people with even me and lower grades were very well funded. So I don't think scholarship committee just looks at your scores. So don't worry about your scores so much. It's more about the critical engagement, I'd say, if anyone else has to add.
Yeah, thanks, Medha.
Great. Afrin, do you want to unmute and ask your question?
Yes, hi. My question is regarding the Felix application for SOAS. I wanted to ask that there is a specific section in the application where we have to mention our work experience. So I'm a bit confused about what to write and how to write it, because it's like in an essay pattern. So as a fresh graduate, I don't have professional employment experience per se, and I have more of internship experiences and volunteer work experiences and stuff like that. So I'm not sure how to write that specific section successfully. That's it.
I can take that question if that's okay. Yeah, so I had also applied for my master's right after my undergrad studies. And I think what they basically expect you to do is mention the place that you worked at and the duration of your work there. If it's like 1 month or 2 months, mention that. And then also briefly describe what you did there. So if it was like a research assistantship under a professor, mention that what project were you working on, and what was the final outcome of the project? Was it published? Was it a book project or an article or something else? So I think that should be about it for the work experience. So don't worry about if you're just applying after your undergraduate. You can easily mention your internships, any other volunteer work that you've done. That should be okay. Atri, if you need to add something, please feel free.
No, I actually completely agree with what Zaid said, that even I didn't have like proper professional work experience when I applied for the PhD. And include any kind of internship or any opportunity that you have worked with, especially if that kind of clearly relates to the course that you're applying for. That might be helpful no matter how little time you have spent there, or if it's not quote unquote professional work experience, that's fine.
I actually have another query which is a bit relevant. So that also goes for the CV that I'll be submitting, right? Like in the professional work experience, the employment part, or wherever I'm going to highlight my work experience, I'm going to mention all of that, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much.
Great. So I think now we'll move to some questions in chat, and I'll only take questions that are related to the Felix Scholarship, because we have many of those unlimited time. So if your question is not related to the Felix Scholarship, we may just take it right at the end if we have time. So
Misbah, just one thing. I think Sarah is raising her hand and she has not been like considered. So if you want to take her first and then, oh, has she? Oh, I think she has put her hand down. I'm sorry.
okay, yeah. So then we'll take questions in chat and then again raised hands. So I think I'll just club a few questions. One is, I've done a master's degree in India. I want to apply for master's again at Oxford. Am I eligible for Felix? Two is there any requirement for English language proficiency test scores like IELTS or TOEFL for Felix? And third, can we apply for Felix, or are we eligible even if we've deferred an offer from last year? So yeah, I think these three questions, if anybody wants to take them.
Okay, I think the answers to all of this should be on your course website. But if you've done a master's previously at all, you will not be considered for the Felix Scholarship at the same degree level. It's there. So one thing is a request I have for candidates is that your course website and the Felix Scholarship website you need to really go through them very carefully and double check. And I think it helps us if you ask questions that are not already there on those websites, because this is your opportunity to ask us those questions which you can't get answers to by reading the website. So yes, IELTS requirement is there. It will be listed on your course. If you've done a master's already anywhere in the world, no, you will not be eligible for the Felix Scholarship, at least at Oxford at the same level. Did I miss anything?
Just if you've deferred an offer, would that
Deferred an offer, if it's a deferred offer, I think usually scholarship bodies don't give scholarships to deferred offers, just generally as a rule. I'd really recommend writing to your university student fees and funding if it's Oxford, because in Oxford, it's regulated by the student fees and funding office. So just write to them and ask them that if you're eligible for the scholarship for this year.
Okay, then there's a question for the SOAS application. It's been mentioned that master's application does not require referees or references. Do I still opt for an academic reference? Zaid, Aatreya.
I don't think I understood that question. I don't think you need a reference for the Felix Scholarship application, do you?
No, I don't think so.
No.
You don't need a separate reference for
Yeah.
Felix application. It's the course application references that are considered.
Yeah, exactly.
So when I said get one of your academic referees to say that you're a good candidate for financial support and they strongly recommend you for it, I meant it was just your course recommendation letter only. Sorry, I should have clarified that.
No, yeah, that makes sense. Sadiq, do you want to ask your question?
Hello, am I audible?
Yes.
Ma'am, what is the stand like? I holding DSC from IGNOU, which is distance education. So how it will be applying for this scholarship specifically, as well as for all other scholarship for masters?
Sadiq, I think, can you repeat your question because you weren't audible in the beginning?
Okay, am I audible now?
Yes.
Yeah, actually, I'm holding a DSC from the IGNOU, which is distance education. So, am I eligible to apply for masters for this scholarship, as well as for generally for applying scholarship? How it would be with a master's degree, as well as with a gap? Thank you.
Sadiq, do you have a master's from IGNOU? Is that right?
No, bachelor's from IGNOU.
Okay. Does anybody want to take that?
If it's an honors full-time degree, it should be, but IGNOU, I don't know, Aatreya, or does anyone else want to take it? If it's an honors degree, it should be considered, but I don't know how it works with part-time courses and honors degrees, really.
I
It's a
think you'll be
normal
eligible if you have an honors degree from IGNOU. It does not matter if it was distance learning. I don't remember whether in the application form, I remember that in the Oxford course application form, or at least in most course application forms for universities abroad, they do ask whether your previous education was like full-time, part-time, so it is mentioned in the application. So I don't think that you will be like debarred from applying for Felix or for being considered from Felix, but yeah, I mean, it's fine. You can apply for it.
And then one more thing, actually, I had registered on 2018, but I completed on 2023 because of the work. So I completed. So how it will be affecting generally for all the scholarships, not just for this one?
I can take that. So you can just justify that in your Oxford application. I remember, so I had enrolled in the master's in my undergrad university, and then I dropped out after the first semester and went to work. And in the Oxford application, there is a specific question on have you ever discontinued or deferred your studies? So I had to explain that, yes, I dropped out of my master's course at Jadavpur University, and this is why I did it. So you do have a place to justify that, and just be honest. Just say the real reason. I'm sure you have a pretty good reason for why you needed to defer. So that's not a problem at all.
Also, in
Thank
many
you.
universities, after you after there's a section, generally there's a section after you upload your transcripts to mention any accentuating circumstances because of which you had a disadvantage with respect to submitting, like your degree getting delayed, or your getting the certificate for the degree delayed, and so on and so forth. So you can also mention over there that you got it in 2023 for so and so reasons. So that's not a problem. There was a question above on IELTS and TOEFL. I just want to say that I mean, these are important. Like you need to have these things in most places unless you have an unconditional offer. But you can also take it later. I mean, somebody was asking that I've scheduled it for February, so is it all right? I mean, it's perfectly all right. You can do it later after you've received an offer from the university.
Sadik, does that answer all your questions? Because I see you also asked a few in chat. So is that it?
Yes, ma'am. Okay, thank you.
Perfect. Pavandeep, do you want to ask your question?
Regarding this IELTS and TOEFL only, I was emailing Oxford University regarding a waiver, and I have read the conditions. It says that I can get a waiver if I have been in professional setup where I'm using reading, listening, writing, and so on in an academic environment, which I am. I think I am an academic associate at IIM Indore, so it's academic environment and English speaking majorly this thing. So like they said I should only email in my app, like write in my application. No proof of this is required. So I just wanted to check, like, what should I ask my institute if I want to get an approval or something from them?
Can I take that? I think Oxford is fine, but the visa office creates a problem. I had a degree in English literature, like an honors degree in English literature, and they still made me take the IELTS for the visa. So I was angry, but the point is that I think the university is okay with it. But when it comes to your visa application, then suddenly because the university did not require my IELTS application, it's silly, right? But then for the visa, it was like, yes, you need to give us an IELTS score. So I just had a very rushed last minute signing up for the next IELTS thing. And I'm still very bitter about it, that despite an English literature degree, they thought that I need to take the IELTS, but well, it's Britain.
Yeah, at the same time, I think sometimes they like the visa office is not as strict, because in your confirmation acceptance studies, there's a letter that you get from the university at the end, like once you're accepted for the course. So the university will give out a CAS form in which it mentions that you have been selected and you've been waived off for this test. So generally, I think the visa office is fine with it, but sometimes I'm sure like there are circumstances when it is not. So it's good to so if you're applying, so I'm not sure about Oxford, but if somebody is also applying to Cambridge, I can just tell you that if you want to save your 16 or 17,000 on IELTS, taking an IELTS test, you can not do IELTS and do a test with the Cambridge Center and save that money. Yeah, so just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, maybe it has changed from my year. This was 2020, but just write to your course director and department. They'll be able to guide you.
Thank you so much.
Sarah, do you want to ask your question?
Hi, yes, thank you. So, I wanted to ask the threshold for a first class degree for an institutions of national importance. The threshold there is 65%, and otherwise it's 75%. None of the NLUs are listed in the list that contains all the institutes of national importance. So I go to Gujarat National Law University, so I just wanted to ask which threshold would apply to an NLU or my particular university here.
Zaid, do you want to answer this, considering you're also from GNLU?
That's a difficult question. But I think NLUs should probably come under the Institutes of National Importance. So even if you have something about 65%, that should be considered as first class.
but it is not there in that list. That list contains some 165 universities, but
I know, but NLUs have been set up like very recently, so probably Oxford needs to do some work on these Indian universities that they've put up there.
yeah, I'm so sorry. Like, I know this is very annoying also, but I checked the website was updated on 24th November 2023. So then, uh,
I can give you my example. I didn't have great grades in my undergrad, so it was somewhere in between 65 and 70. So, and I did my master's there after my SOAS. So you should definitely apply.
all right. Thank you so much.
That's okay.
Vishal, do you want to ask your question?
Yeah, good evening. Am I audible?
Yes.
So this Felix scholarships asked for this offer letter, right? So if it okay if I have a conditional offer letter, or should it be an unconditional offer letter only?
Conditional is fine.
Thank you.
Fatima?
My question is not related to specifically Felix Scholarship. Is that okay if I ask? I mean, if there is anybody else who wants to. Is that okay? So actually, see, I have a 13, 12-year-old child, and I've been looking for information on, do mothers, I mean, do women go with children for, for a year? Of course, I can get more information on Felix. I don't think Felix supports dependence. They do have questions on it on the form, though. So have you ever come across a person who is, studying in the universities, having a child around, is that, because I really am not getting the information on this on internet.
Yes. And if you want support for your, I think Gates Cambridge is a fabulous scholarship for that, where they have separate money for dependents.
Oh,
Yeah, so
okay.
yeah.
And also DAD actually is very good as well. So I don't know if you were there at the workshop that we did on the DAD scholarship, but I'd recommend that you look at that because they also support. But if you come with the family, I think they give some increased stipend and they really do support you. So it's one of the few scholarships that does support dependents.
And just a fun
Okay.
example, I had a mother on my MSc course whose two sons are
Yeah.
studying at Oxford. So don't worry about it.
So Oxford,
No,
is
her
there a
sons are
school?
also studying at Oxford. The mother is
Oh,
doing
okay, all right.
don't worry
And
about it.
okay, and there are options for children to, I mean, because obviously for a year children can't be put to school, right? Or is that okay over there?
No,
No, right?
that's not what I meant. I meant her sons were also doing their masters at Oxford
Yeah,
when she was doing it. So
yeah,
it's not a problem at age. We have university going, I mean, women with university going children who are also studying here. So I meant it in terms of the age and experience. But yeah,
yeah.
you get schools here at Oxford under the different colleges, so that's not a problem.
Okay, thanks.
Sadiq, do you have a new question or is your hand raised from before? I'm gonna guess it's pending. It's from before. Okay, so I'm trying to see if there's any question that hasn't been answered either through the presentation already or through the questions that were asked. Okay, so there's a question, how can one express that they have received a gold medal in their bachelor's in their Oxford application for Felix? How do you mention this in UK terms or in any ways that has an impact on the admissions committee?
So you have a gold medal. Is that the question? Yeah, so put it on your CV. And your professor, your academic referee gets this question that were you in the top 2% or this percent or that percent, and yeah, it's CV.
Yes. Another question is the need to study in the UK for that particular course or research and not in India something that we need to clarify in our application?
I'm anyone else, please take it.
Okay, so I was trying to understand the question. I did not get it, so I got it now. In the course, it helps. I mean, in your proposal, if you could indicate, so it does not have to be like country specific, right? So if you just mention that why you need to work under a particular supervisor, why you want to work in the particular department of the university, so that kind of justifies why you want to go to UK and to this particular university. So it's good if you do it in your application, either in the not the proposal, but like when you write your statement of purpose or wherever there's an opportunity to indicate reasons for applying in UK. So actually, I'm remembering from Cambridge application, but for Oxford, if somebody remembers in specific, they can also pitch in. But I'm just saying that it's always helpful to show even to the university there, not just to the scholarship board, that why you want to apply here and to the specific department and who you want to work with and what is the expertise that you're trying to get over there. Yeah.
Just echoing Monika's thoughts. So professors you want to work with, research centers at Oxford. So I mainly said that, okay, there are these research centers. So resource is always a good point of, because there are better resources there and you want to access those resources to study your country better. So I think it's just focus more specifically on professors, research groups, materials, etc.
You can also, one more thing, I mean, yeah, Medha covered almost all of it, but just one more thing that you can also mention that in general, what kind of work is happening in that continent. So for instance, if you're, like if I give my own example, so the work on, let's say, gender consent and law is happening more in UK than as compared to US or even in India. So, you can also make those kind of comparisons in your application wherever it provides an opportunity.
I had a question regarding this.
Yeah, go for it.
Like, how do we know that which continent or which place is having more work on this? Like, this is not something a commonplace knowledge, is it?
So it generally happens when you read. So let's say you're reading an article, which is so whatever your area of research is. So for instance, if I speak from my own example, so if I'm working on rape law in India, I cannot not read Pratiksha Bakshi's work, right? So there would be a few of those works that you have to identify, which are like extremely landmark works that have happened in your own area of research, and then just look at the references, the kind of references that those. So the kind of snowballing that you do to get sense of what are the other works that these scholars are referring to, and then just see that what is the general trend that. So for instance, when I talk about gender, when I'm speaking about gender, if you look at US, so most of these Ivy League universities are taking the issue of sexuality very seriously, but taking the category of woman as it is and then talking about sexual offenses and looking at legal categories and questioning those legal categories is something that is happening more in UK. So you get that sense by just reading and reading the landmark works and then reading works around that. So you get a sense of that. And then you can also maybe follow Twitter. So Twitter helps get a sense of what kind of conferences are happening in what kind of universities.
Yeah, I think just to add to that, so one, obviously, if you keep reading literature, you'll get a sense of where like a lot of the work is coming from. And also sometimes like there are more like universities have research centers and you get a sense of what kind of research is happening and what kind of reports are being published on that on that theme. And so you also then get a sense. And there are a lot of, again, centers also do a lot of comparative work. So sometimes it's helpful to look at that as well. So these can be like, yeah, comparative within the country or across countries. So that helps. Yeah. There was So there's a clarification on the reference question. So there is no requirement of a referee in taught masters in SOAS, and there's no requirement for referee in Felix. So does that mean that you don't have to submit a reference at all? And how are we supposed to indicate our financial position in that situation?
When I applied, I think there was you needed to submit one reference for your master's program. Maybe it's changed now. Atri, do you have any idea?
For masters, I'm not sure, but for PhD, you obviously need references to be submitted in the course. So for the masters, maybe we could you could ask the admissions team that you're applying for, use their email ID to kind of ask if they require references when you are going to submit a scholarship application later on. Because one of the things that SOAS also does is the course application often says that one reference is fine, but sometimes a scholarship requires two. So kind of clarifying that might be helpful, because these rules, as you know, keep changing from time to time.
Yeah, and I'd say again, I'm also trying to locate it on the SOAS website, but while I'm doing that, if it's optional and if it's not mandatory, I'd say still submit a recommendation letter. So so then they can then speak of all of the things that you want a referee to speak on. So if it's not mandatory, but there is an option for you to submit it, then do submit it and ensure that it's an academic referee. It's always better. So again, this question has been answered already on having an unconditional offer. If you have a conditional offer, that is okay. You are going to be eligible for the scholarship. Okay, I am trying to see if there's any question that hasn't been answered from the chat. If your question hasn't been answered and still in chat, please put it again in chat. Afri, until then you can ask your question. Afreen, I see you have raised your hand.
Hi, yes. I wanted to sort of ask this question जो आप लोगों ने इससे पहले discuss किया ना regarding that the visa office asks for the English language test scores. So does that, like, were you talking about it even if the university has already sent you an unconditional offer? Like, do they still hold that reservation that they can ask you for the English language test scores even if you hold the unconditional offer? I think I missed that.
So I think these are two separate things. If the university gives you an unconditional offer, it means that they did not require you to send your IELTS scores, which means that they must have waived it. I think it's best to just get a letter of IELTS waiver from your university and submit that for your visa application, so that you definitely have like stamped letter from the university saying this candidate does not need to take the IELTS.
That clarifies it. Thank you, Medha.
Sadiq, have you raised your hand again? So do you have a question?
Hello, I'm audible?
Yes.
Yeah, ma'am. Actually, I was looking to do masters in life science department. So, is there any way that someone I can connect to, to get a guidance regarding this? Someone who is already doing, masters or completed in life science department. It would be very helpful.
Sadiq, send us an email at info@project.eduaccess.com and we'll try it. Our applications, we've already begun our mentorship program and it's already sort of mid like it's mid-process, so I don't know how much we'll be able to support you, but please do send us an email. I will just write down the email address here, and send us your query and what the requirement is, and we'll try.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
So there was a question on proposed research. So I've received a conditional offer for taught masters at SOAS. Do I have to answer the question related to proposed sorry. Do I have sorry, excuse me. Do I have to answer the question related to proposed research in the application form? Zaid has already answered this in chat, which is that no, it's only for PhD applicants. Yes, Shankar, you can unmute and ask your question.
Hello everyone. Actually, I've just completed a BTech in aerospace engineering. I need to do masters related to my field. But when I'm looking in this SOS, so I'm not finding any courses in the engineering field. So is there any courses that are available? Am I clear?
Shankar, I don't think we'll be really able to tell you what courses you can pursue. Again, I think I'd mentioned this in chat as well. I'd suggest that you look at, when you're searching, maybe go through departments. So when you look at the, I don't think SOAS will have, I don't know if SOAS has STEM.
I don't think so.
Yeah, so SOAS actually doesn't do science related courses, but there are other universities, and so when you are looking at other universities, whether it's Oxford, Cambridge, University of Reading, and so look at the department. So go to the, say for example, engineering department of the university, and there'll be a page that'll say graduate research or graduate courses, and so go to that and see what are the courses that are available in that university. Again, I don't think we'll be really able to tell you which course is suitable for you. This is something that you'll have to do, and it'll take some sort of research on your end and might take some time, but again, you'll have to go through university websites and find what's the best for you.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay. So the question is, what should be the word limit for the question of bringing benefit to your home country? I think there is a word limit already on the form, but Aatreya and Zaid, do you want to speak on that?
Yeah, there is a word limit already in the form. So if you open the form, you can see it's written there.
Yeah, and I think there was a question on, so I sent a link to the application form for the scholarship at SOAS, and you'll notice that it's asking for an application ID. And so that application ID, as it says on the form as well, when you start your application on the university website on SOAS, university website, it'll generate an application ID, and so that's the application ID that you need to put in the form. And I think unless you fill all of those things in the form, you won't be able to go to the next set of questions. So that means you have to start your SOAS application at the course, sort of on the SOAS graduate application website, for you to be able to then move ahead with your application form. But again, correct me if I'm wrong, Zaid and Aatreya. Okay. There was another question which I don't know if I already asked, which is that does a 1-year postgraduate diploma in India count as a master's program?
I don't think it counts as a master's program, because I've seen a lot of people from, for instance, Ashoka University doing the Young India Fellowship and then coming for masters here with Felix.
I think that's about it. And we're also, yeah, we more than an hour. has passed, and I think we've responded to all of the questions that were in chat. I don't see anything that's been unanswered, but if any of the speakers have seen any question that they want to answer.
Yeah, just one question that there's this, I think Zaid has answered it, but just to, one is that you should, on the question about word limit, sorry, in the SOAS application form. So the first question, the word limit for the first question is specified, and for the rest of the questions is not specified. I was just going to the form and trying to take a look at it. Of the last year. So what you can do is that because it is like 450 for the first answer, so you should keep it around the same word limit for the rest of the answers as well. So you can, try to write it in 450 words for the next question as well. But as that suggested, you can also alternatively write to the SOAS Scholarship Office and ask if there's some specific word requirement. Yeah.
Great. So yes, I think we've answered all of the questions, I think. I am just putting a few links in chat for all of you. So the first link is the Felix Scholarship for SOAS. So it's the University of SOAS University's page on the Felix Scholarship, and you'll find all of the information as well as the link to the online application form on this link. The second is for the University of Reading. They haven't updated their page, so it still gives the details for last year's application. So don't get worried when you see that it says January 2023. I think it's just that they haven't updated it, but most likely it'll be a similar timeline and a similar application process. And again, the link for the Felix Scholarship at University of Oxford. So these are the three things that these are the three links that you should definitely have a look at when you are sitting with your application. The fourth is a link to our YouTube channel. So the recording of this workshop will be uploaded on the YouTube channel. So if you joined late or if there's any parts that you missed, you will be able to find a recording and the presentation on the YouTube channel. And if you have any queries, you can reach out to us at info@project.eduaccess.com. This is only for people who are not mentees with us. For mentees, you'll hear from us more on the Felix Scholarship sometime soon. And yes, I think that's all. We've been going on for a while, but thank you so much, Medha, Monika, Zaid, and Aatreya for joining us today and for answering all of the questions and being very patient with us. And thank you to everyone who joined us today. And yeah, hope you all have a nice rest of your weekend, and good luck with your application. Thank you once again, Aatreya, Zaid, Monika, and Medha.
Thanks, Misbah, and good luck to all
you.
applicants.
Yeah, good luck to all applicants.